Hello and welcome back to Ignite&Scale. I'm Mike Allen from Cambria Private Capital, and I couldn't be more excited to kick off season 2 with you all. After a great first season filled with insights and stories from some of the brightest minds in the business, we're ready to dive in even deeper into the stories of innovators and leaders who are driving change and scaling new heights in the automotive industry. To start this season off right, I'm joined by a very special guest, John Miele, UK Country Manager for CarCare. John and I go way back to the early days of CarWow, and now John is spearheading CarCare's UK expansion, and we believe this company is poised to revolutionise the automotive industry, offering dealers solutions they need today, consolidating systems, automating inventory management, and giving dealers the real insights to know their numbers. Good morning.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. I mean, to kick things off, I think it's only fitting really to reflect how far we've come, from those early days of CarWow, and it was a great ride. But looking back, what were some of the key challenges that you faced in particular in growing that business that disrupted the traditional car sales model? And how did those experiences prepare you for your current role at CarCare?
It feels like a long time ago now. So 2013 when we started. So I think the important thing looking back is to have that kind of have the right mindset, always looking to innovate, and you can only really do that if you properly understand your customers. So I had to very quickly build up a good knowledge in terms of how do they make money, what are the structures like OEM bonuses, etc. And I had to really understand it, and then once you've got that and you've got a couple of early adopters, you can learn from them as well in terms of what do the best do. And I think that really helps you grow, because I think one of the biggest things is teaching somebody something they might not know. So I learned a lot. And when you're learning from others in the business, and you come across some other people who haven't heard of something before, if you can teach them that kind of a way that it might be different and change their mindset maybe about what they think you might be versus what you could be, that really helps bring them on a journey. I also think looking back, you have to be pretty resilient.
Yes.
we were a bit Marmite at the beginning, I think it's fair to say. I remember being at one of the black tie events, and somebody called me over to the bar who I'd met recently and said, have a drink. So we were having a drink, and then somebody else comes along I've never met before, introduced me, and that didn't go down too well. And I got quite a big old shoulder barge at the bar to say, "Don't want to ever see you again." I was like, okay, but again, like if you can be resilient and you can actually really understand where you're making a difference and how you're helping, then actually if you can then have those conversations with some people who might at the beginning think one way, you can change them. And funnily enough, that person ended up being a customer further down the line a few years later. So it's about being a bit more resilient and challenging mindsets.
No, you were certainly resilient in those early days. I remember that well.
It was fun.
I mean, John, CarCare's entry into the UK is a major step forward for the business. It might be worth just giving us a little bit of background on CarCare, where it's come from, and then maybe moving on to what motivated you to take on the challenge. And, they've got similar logos, but how do you see your experience at CarWow shaping your approach to growing out a really important market for CarCare?
Yeah, so fair point. Let's go try and do that in order. So a bit of background. So CarCare have been going for just over 4 years now, and it's an inventory management system to try and help dealers increase stock turn, essentially. It's in terms of what motivated me to join, it's quite simple, really. I think firstly, I've made quite a lot of friends in the industry, been in it for a long time now. And actually, as I said before, it's fun. There's a lot of change. Dealers operate off small margins, and ultimately there's a lot of similar-minded people who are quite innovative in dealerships and run dealerships. And I think they're really good at kind of facing adversity and looking at how can we do something new to help our business model. And so that's interesting straight away. It keeps it fun, keeps it interesting. So I think looking back at Carwell, what was important for me is that, you know, if you can make a huge impact to someone's business, it really is rewarding. You know, that many a fun kind of dinner with some customers, or being invited to like a track day or golf days and stuff like that, and it keeps it fun, but also it's really rewarding when the reason they do that and you can have those experiences is because you're making a huge impact. So it was really important for me that whatever I did next was something that I thought could make a huge impact. And then when CarCare approached me, obviously I had to do a bit of investigating and digging around. So some of those friends that I did make, I got on the phone to them. Some of them ran groups, some of them were franchise directors or general managers. And I just wanted to, you know, ask them certain questions about how they did things today, what systems they had in place, were there any gaps, were there any pain points, etc. And it was quite clear very quickly that there seemed to be a bit of a gap that CarCare were plugging in the Nordic markets that could well be used in the UK. So I thought that was important, because going back to that huge impact, that, you know, I wanted something that was going to actually make people stop and think, okay, this could be a game changer for us. And then secondly, when I met Lars, who's the CEO, he reminded me of James actually very much back at Carlisle days, but you know, he's really switched on, ambitious. You know, just straight away there was a bit of a connection there, and I trusted him as a person, and I think that's important as well. And then finally, what I did was I actually spoke to one of their customers in Sweden. Obviously, they put me in touch with somebody who likes the system and stuff. You know, that makes sense. But this sales manager he was at a Volkswagen dealer, quite a big one in Stockholm, and he was so enthusiastic about how it's changed his business, and he was like pitching it to me, and I just thought, okay, this makes sense to kind of have a go at. And then in terms of scaling, and you know, my experience from Carwell, you know, I am used to kind of trying to help build something from nothing. You know, and it's not just that's not a one person can do that. You need a team of people to help, and like-minded people. And I feel like that's what we've got at CarCare. And you know, obviously when I joined Carwell, I was just making a few £1,000s a year. 8 years later, when I left, it was at 30 million, which, you know, it grew very nicely, and you learn things along the way when you do that. And it's I think one of the things to take from it is you've got to learn from mistakes that you make at the beginning. You know, because everyone makes them. I've made plenty, and you've got to start a bit more slow and steady, and you know, learn from the things that go wrong. And I think that's what I've done with CarCare over the last circa 9 months. We've had our first few customers go live. And again, you have to go through, you know, okay, where are the issues? How do we tailor this to the UK market? What changes do we need? And we've gone through that, and now again got some really great feedback from the early adopters, because if that goes wrong, then you just failed from the beginning. You have to get that right. It's not about, you know, let's try and get as many people working with us as soon as possible, because that'd be a full kind of flat on your face if you do that, in my experience. So that they're the kind of things I brought along. And then the other thing that I've learned is the support team that you have in place is really important. And what I mean by support team is that could be varied roles within the business, but ultimately, if you really care, if the people in the business really care about the kind of customer challenges out there, then everyone will work together to see what can we do to make their life easier. You know, keep developing tools, keep feeding back in terms of product, and you know, and so that's really important to get people into the business who care about their customers. And if you can do that, then I think everyone can kind of grow quite quickly at the back end of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been over with you first hand and met all the people there, and you know, there's an incredible, you know, a high degree of understanding, and there's a lot of technical expertise as well. And obviously, CarCare is proven in Scandinavia, but really, in terms of the UK, I mean, obviously dealers are facing a really complex and difficult trading environment. We have all year, if we're being honest. There's lots of factors going on, and obviously dealers have to interface with multiple disconnected systems as well. So
yeah.
Why is now the perfect time for CarCare to enter the UK? What can they do for a dealer, and how can CarCare address some of the biggest challenges dealers have got at the moment, and let's be frank, likely to have going into next year as well?
Yeah, I think we mentioned it earlier. There's this kind of small margins that dealerships operate off of, and even the best operators out there, the ones with the best return on sale, finding it challenging, as you say, to kind of maintain those levels. And there's more complexities with new brands coming in, potential new models, etc., new sales models. So yeah, it makes it tough in terms of what can you do about it? It's the old cliches essentially, but they're old cliches because they've stood the test of time. But it's when it's small margins, you need to look to try and get marginal gains, and I think that helps you control the controllables, all of that kind of stuff, which has been around for years, but makes sense. That's why it's been around for years. And in terms of marginal gains, I think one of the issues with it is you can only do it if you can actually measure what is exactly going on in your business. And if you can't exactly measure it, if you can't answer a simple question like, how long does it take you to get a car from arrival to retail ready on the forecourt? If you can't answer those things, then you can't look to improve it. You have to be able to measure every part of that process along the way. And in terms of CarCare, no dealership wants a 50th system. There's loads and loads of systems within businesses already. And I think what we've done really well is actually help reduce either logins to systems, because we're pulling information from existing systems and giving kind of one true view of what's going on in a business. Or in some cases actually replacing other systems as well, and consolidating systems, and that just depend on what systems certain dealerships have in play, but yeah, I think that's something that's really important, is being able to understand what's going on in the business so you can make key decisions, and also it's about trying to simplify the number of systems that your guys and girls on the ground have to kind of use day in, day out to actually operate efficiently, and that's something that we've already done really well. So interestingly, one of the first couple of clients that went live, when we were speaking to them, we were talking about something that I just mentioned. How long does it take you to prepare cars, as an example? They were saying that it's funny because they don't know is the actual answer, or didn't. And they were saying to me that often the general manager might call his team together and say, get the workshop controller, get the sales manager, get everyone together and say, okay, where are we at? And after digging into a lot of information, trying to kind of estimate that it might be at about, whatever it might be, 20 days or something like that. But then, the franchise director might ask the general manager, where are you at? And, they might say, oh, we're about 15 days. And then the CEO or the finance director might ask the franchise director, and they say, no, I think we're about 12 days or something. And then, a manufacturer asks the CEO, and there are 7 days or whatever it might be. That's kind of like happened over time. And now it's a case of just being able to see, because if everyone can see, nobody turns up to do a bad job, but other things get in the way, or it gets difficult to understand where cars are or why they've been forgotten about. If you can see instantly, and people can get notified of cars that have deviated away from like what they should be doing, then all of a sudden, A, you can keep on top of those numbers, but B, you can improve them, and you can see where you need to improve them.
And I think one of the things I've seen over this year, there's been a lot of development work that's gone into the system, and CarCare is evolving all the time and improving. And I guess on the used car days in stock, where you might get problems with parts, with manufacturers, etc. But what the system can do is dig into, okay, you can't control that aspect of it, but there's other aspects of it that can still allow you to save a day or two. And, given interest rates remain high, there's still an ROI. So it's what I like about it is it digs into the there are uncontrollable aspects of it, but it still focuses your mind on your controllables and allowing you to save those critical 1-3 days, which is massive to the bottom line.
I completely agree. And other things that have kind of come out recently from our first few groups using it, things that I didn't really think we'd be able to solve going into it at the beginning. It's not that we couldn't solve, just didn't, it's not something on my radar. But actually, when you start to get to know the businesses, you start to understand what they're looking at, their challenges. We've managed to give them the ability to, because we pull from different systems, to literally click a button and say, like, how does a grade 1 car compare to a grade 2 car in terms of how much it costs to prep, how quickly we get it prepped, how long it takes to sell, the profitability of that car. How does that compare with, if I'm buying cars from source A versus source B versus part exchanges, etc. And disposing of cars, when I'm disposing of them, I get a certain amount of profitability depending on where I dispose them, but how quickly do they get disposed of and how long are they on my balance sheet for? And actually, if I'm getting paid more, but they're taking 10, 15 days longer to get rid of it at auction, for instance, is that actually more profitable or not versus this other route? So it's, that's just because of being able to put everything into one system, you can start just literally at a click of a button, getting this information to, again, help make strategic calls on where you source cars from, how you dispose of them, et cetera, et cetera. So,
yeah. And to wrap up, John, what's the one piece of advice you give to dealers listening in as they navigate these market changes and look to adapt? What's the easiest way to adapt the technology? I'm guessing it's kind of get to know your team, see the demo, understand the system architecture, and see if you can help. Or how else would you encourage dealers to interact with what you've got?
Well, I think there's a couple of points. I think, first of all, I think dealers in general, they want to embrace technology, right? They know that it can help them be more efficient. The problem is there's loads and loads out there, and you can't go and invest in all of them. So I think making the first thing is choosing the right ones to invest in. So things like, is it really easy to calculate a return on investment? Can it have an instant impact to my business today rather than promising what we could do in future? And is there a capacity then to innovate, to stay ahead of any trends and changes going forward? I think they're 3 key points that if you're looking at any technology, you should be asking yourself, really. In terms of, understanding how it can impact you today, I think one of the important things is to understand what actually happens today. And that's no disrespect to anybody, because, people who are directors of businesses, they've got a lot of things on their daily plate. They don't necessarily know what happens in the detail of when a car arrives, what happens before it gets prepped. And what I mean by that is, when we turn, a new partner on, before we do anything, we go and we process map. So we speak to the guys and girls on the ground who are doing the actual job, and manager thinks, when there's 5 steps that happen, but actually from step 1 to step 2, when you're speaking to the people who do it, there's 3 or 4 additional manual steps that happen. And when you're process mapping this with the managers and the operators in the room, often what can happen is they say, well, hold on, we're doing that for every car. And what you find is actually, it's not that they're doing bad processes, but bad habits can become processes. And that's just how we've always done it. So that's how we keep doing it. And if you can really dig into the detail of what happens, which is what we do with our partners, often they'll look to change their process before they've even gone live with a new technology, because they start to see the inefficiencies just in that. So I think, if you can identify where there are gaps and look for something that can make an impact today and easily calculate the ROI, I think that's the important part.
John, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. And to me, I'm a big fan of CarCare, and I believe it's doing great things for dealers out there and has got so much potential. If you're listening and want to learn more about the product or meet John, then his contact details will be in the show notes. But please do get in touch, because it's it's a fabulous product to drive some ROI in this complex environment. John, thanks again.
Thanks, Mike. And sorry for the croaky voice, but appreciate you giving us some time. Cheers.
If you want to listen to more episodes of the podcast, we're on all good audio platforms. Our website is also www.cambriaprivatecapital.com. And you can also find myself on LinkedIn and Twitter, where we publish our weekly blogs as well. Please do get in touch if you want more information.